Welcome back to episode 2 of LBG Reviews to Sleep To. When we left off, Splinter had just told us about how the town's notice board had been finished. When you check out the notice board works by randomly selecting a person from that town and picking out an item relevant to their area, such as for Strad, the lumberjacks will mostly ask for basic pieces of equipment that you can make pretty easily at the start of the game. But before we dive any further, please take this time to adjust yourself, get wrapped up in your sheets, get cozy, and sit back as we dive further into Alien. Y'all set? Good. Now then, as you progress by completing more and more random contracts, eventually you'll notice a hooded figure appear in Strad. However, before you get a chance to talk to the hooded figure, you'll be informed by one of the residents of Strad that a thief has run off with some of the residents' coins, and that the resident thinks that they went towards an abandoned well not far from the village. Going to the abandoned well, you find a rat person who is willing to give back the villagers' money. However, upon finding out that you're a blacksmith, says that he will only give back the money if you make something for him. A pair of iron sewing needles. Sewing needles are relatively easy to make. All it is with 4 out of the 6 strips sharpened at the grindstone. When you take back the sewing needles back to the mouse person, he thanks you, gives you the person's money, and you both go on your way. Handing the money back to the victim thanks you and goes on their way. Now back to the hooded figure. The hooded figure explains that he had heard about a new blacksmith in Alien, and that he came down to see your handiwork for himself. He comments that your work is impressive, but that he is looking for more legendary work. He explains that the blacksmiths of Alien used to be able to make an everlasting flame, that candles made with this everlasting flame would never blow out, and that is extremely important for the job he is going to ask of you, because he lives in a very cold, very windy environment, and that normal candles will not cut it up there. So he was hoping that you'd be able to make him a chandelier that would be able to withstand the cold forever, never going out. The chandelier recipe itself is fairly straightforward. It is a chain with 4 1x1 iron strips, as well as 4 candlesticks lit with everlasting fire. But how do we get everlasting fire? Perhaps Dristin knows more. When you ask Dristin about how to get everlasting fire, he remembers that his old master, the old master blacksmith, used to be able to make everlasting fire, and that he would imagine that either some remnant of it, or at least the instructions on how to make it, should be relatively close to the village of Stall. There is a ruin nearby Stall that you can find on the world map. Going to the ruins there, you encounter a note left behind by the old master blacksmith, talking about an old friend of theirs, talking about how they would wield a spear in one hand and a sword in the other. In the same set of ruins, there is also 2 pedestals, as well as a face carved into stone in between the pedestals. This is one of the game's many puzzles, where the solution is to simply take a spear from nearby in the ruins, as well as a sword that you find close to the note, and place them in the corresponding pedestals to the hands in which the old blacksmith's friend wielded the weapons. Doing so opens up a secret compartment where the everlasting ember can be found, going back to stall with the everlasting ember. You can find that a new blueprint has been made available at the construction table outside your home, which, to put it simply, all it does is it outfits the forge with an everlasting fire and allows you to make everlasting embers yourself. But how do you make everlasting embers? You might be wondering. Well, Alien is full of magic. Magic that even the people who live there do not fully understand. Not too far from Strad, there is a swamp. The swamp has some unusual properties where each step you take, you might be ending up in a puddle of water and be sent all the way back to where you started from in the swamp. But the trees of the swamp have a valuable resource, a special type of wood that allows for magical properties to be applied to the wood. Collecting some of this special wood and taking it back to the forge, you can create everlasting embers. But we don't need everlasting embers right now for the chandelier. We need everlasting candles. So, you have to figure out how to get candles. Talking to Dristan reveals nothing. Talking to the people of Strad reveals nothing. Who else do we know? That's right, the rat man in the well. Going down and talking to the rat man in the well. The rat man explains that he is more than happy to give you a set of candles, but that the candles won't be free, because he explains that the iron sewing needles you made for him not too long ago have already worn out because of how excited he was to be able to start sewing. He asks you to get him steel sewing needles. But where do we get steel from? Well, not here. Not anywhere near Stall, not anywhere near Strad, not even in the swamp. But if you manage to navigate all the way through the swamp, you come out to a pine forested area. And within this pine forest, there is a cave that contains a lot of steel ore, as well as dangerous bat monsters whose claws are whiter than snow, their eyes more bloodshot and piercing than the night. But that is all I will describe of them, for I wish for you only the nicest of slumbers. On your way back to the forge after gathering the steel ore, you can also encounter an ox strapped to a broken down cart along the side of the road. If you have a knife on you, you can use the knife to cut the rope for the ox. After you cut the rope for the ox excitedly and, as the game puts it, gratefully moos. The player character invites the ox back to stall, and when you make it back to the forge, you will find that the ox is there waiting for you. when you go over to talk to Driston about making these steel sewing needles and about saving the ox, Tristan mentions that that's a great thing because he just had a great idea. A mobile forge, a way for you to take your blacksmithing talents on the road, so that way you don't have to keep coming back to stall whenever you need to make something new. So you restore a stable within the stall, and then Dristan works on souping up a ruined cart he found nearby, and in doing so, you gain access to the mobile forge. Now, the unique thing about the mobile forge, unlike traveling on foot in Alien, is that the mobile forge does not require energy for you to use. Instead, it only takes energy if you get off of the mobile forge, set up a campsite, and decide to go on foot. But with steel sewing needles in hand, you take them back to the mouse person. They happily give you 4 candles in exchange for the steel sewing needles. And as a result, you're free to use the candles at the forge to make everlasting candles. Taking the everlasting candles and the 4 iron strips, as well as a chain, which takes 7 1x1 iron strips. Taking the chain and the various other components, you are able to make the everlasting chandelier. The hooded man thanks you when you take the chandelier to him, but notes that he will not be immediately paying you, as he needs to verify that the chandelier you just gave him can withstand the cold winds of his home. But with that concludes the main things that you need to do in the town of Strad. Also, in the swamp near Strad, you can find an unusual moving house. Going inside the house, you find that you cannot leave without solving a series of puzzles, such as placing dolls at a dinner table, picking out the proper colored cloth for the table, crafting a chandelier to go into the center, crafting a candelabra to go in the center of the dinner table, putting the shoes in the shoe rack, as well as restoring the various people that need to be seated at the table. But in doing so, you get to meet a ghost wearing red shoes, who asks you a bunch of silly quiz questions. And once you answer all the quiz questions correctly, he'll move his house out of the way, granting you easier access through the swamp. But with your mobile forge, you also then receive a letter from a woman named Opal. Opal explains that she has heard about your desires to become a legendary blacksmith, and that she has an opportunity for you. That she has an opportunity that may allow you to fulfill that calling. But in order to do so, you must prove yourself, and prove yourself to the other village leaders all throughout Alien. From here, while the iron's hot, seemingly opens up quite a bit, but in reality, there is a set path that is required of you to go on. But look at the time. Before we go off journeying any further and venturing into new lands to gather more materials, learn more things to blacksmith, and other things to do in the land of Elian, don't you think it's about time for you to fall asleep and to enjoy the night ahead and get up in the morning well rested. I hope you've enjoyed episode 2. Tune in 2 weeks when we do episode 3. Good night and sleep well.